hall of the Great Alien Council was filled with light from hundreds of glowing orbs that floated near the ceiling. Leaders of many species sat in rows of stone seats carved into the walls. Their faces were proud and sharp, their eyes cold. With superiority, the center of the chamber stood a single human, surrounded by guards with heavy armor and long weapons. The alien leaders stared at him, as if he was a strange animal brought for amusement. Whispers spread across the chamber, and then the laughter began. One tall reptilian leader slammed his tail against the floor and said that humans were weak creatures, bound by emotions like sorrow, love, and hope. Another alien with silver skin hissed that emotions were nothing more than a sickness of the brain. They said logic and strength were all that mattered, and humans had neither. The laughter grew louder, echoing against the chamber walls, rising. Like cruel music that made the guards themselves smirk, the human, a thin man in a simple gray uniform, did not shout back. He did not even defend himself, only stood there, still and silent, his eyes calm but heavy with sadness. His lips moved, slightly, as if whispering something only he could hear. The aliens expected him to cry or beg. They waited for fear to appear on his face, but it did not come. The silence made the chamber colder. A few younger alien delegates shifted in their seats, feeling a strange unease. Why did the human not break? Why did he look at them with such steady eyes, as if their laughter meant nothing? One insect-like alien turned its antenna slowly, watching him more carefully than the others. There was something in the way the human held his pain inside that made even the mocking sound weaker for a brief moment. The council leader, a massive creature with 6 arms and a face like stone, demanded the human to explain why humans clung to emotions. He said emotions were chains that slowed the mind. The human raised his head and answered in a soft voice that emotions were not chains but fire, and fire could burn even in the darkest void. His words were simple, but they hung in the air like smoke, refusing to fade. The council burst into another round of laughter, yet it felt less like triumph and more like a shield against something unseen. The human's calmness unsettled them. In a way they could not admit, the guards dragged him back to his corner, locking heavy cuffs around his wrists, but his quiet stare did not change. An alien scholar whispered that humans were entertaining test subjects. Another suggested they should use humans to study how emotions worked, to see how long it took before despair killed them. They spoke as if humans were not people at all, only fragile creatures waiting to be torn apart. The human listened without speaking, but inside him a quiet storm was rising. He remembered the faces of his people, his family, his home. His heart ached, but it did not break. That ache gave him strength, and the aliens could not see it. Later, in the council's private chamber, some alien leaders mocked humans further, telling jokes about how humans wept over the loss of one life when entire species could be wiped away without a thought. They laughed about how humans celebrated love and friendship, calling it foolishness. Yet one alien commander, older than the rest, stayed silent during the mockery. His yellow eyes narrowed as he remembered ancient stories told in whispers about humans. He remembered words about how humans had once burned their own world to ashes but still crawled back, stronger than before. He wondered if the council was making a mistake by laughing too loudly. Back in the holding cell, the human sat alone on a metal bench. The walls were cold and unkind, yet he kept his eyes open, staring at the faint glow of the guard lights. He knew they wanted to see fear. He knew they expected him to break, to collapse, to beg for mercy. But he would not. He whispered to himself that pain was not the end, but the beginning. Every tear held meaning. Every memory carried power, and no alien would understand that until it was too late. His breath was steady, and though chains held his body, his spirit felt free. In the corridors outside, 2 guards talked in low voices. One said the humans were strange, that their emotions made no sense. The other laughed and said humans were only good for experiments. But when the first guard glanced back into the cell, the human's eyes met his, and a sudden chill crawled down his spine. He did not admit it, but for the first time, he felt as if he was the one being studied, not the other way around. The council thought they had one. They had crushed human dignity by surrounding it with mockery and scorn. But something invisible had already begun to grow in the shadows. The calm silence of the human was not weakness. It was warning. A fire slept behind those quiet eyes, and if the aliens had listened more closely, they might have heard the crackle of its sparks. The laughter in the chamber still echoed, but it no longer felt safe. It felt hollow, like the laughter of children in a graveyard. Something had shifted, and though the council did not yet know it, fear had already entered the room. The alien council wasted no time after their meeting. They wanted proof that human emotions were only weakness, so they ordered experiments. Dozens of humans, both soldiers and civilians, were dragged from their prisons and placed into bright laboratories with cold walls and sharp instruments. The aliens filled the rooms with cameras, eager to watch every reaction. To them, humans were not living beings, but puzzles to break apart. They wanted to see how long it would take before sorrow crushed the human spirit. The first test was simple. The aliens placed 2 humans in separate cages and gave one food but left the other to starve. They laughed when the one with food pushed it through the bars to the starving friend instead of eating. The aliens recorded every moment, mocking, "The act is foolish. Why feed another when survival meant keeping food for yourself?" They could not understand why humans chose sacrifice. In another room, they played images of destroyed human cities. Flames rose on the screens, buildings collapsed, and the cries of people echoed. The aliens expected screams, but instead, the humans in the room stood shoulder to shoulder, silent and strong, as if promising each other they would rebuild. The observers grew restless. It was not fear they were seeing, but something else, something that made them uncomfortable. One young alien scientist whispered that maybe emotions had a hidden power, but his supervisor silenced him with a glare and ordered the next test. The council grew bolder. They wanted to see despair in its purest form. In one chamber, they separated a mother from her child, locking them behind glass walls. The child cried out, pressing tiny hands against the transparent barrier. The mother whispered calm words, her voice steady, even as tears ran down her face. The aliens laughed at her tears, calling them weak. But then the mother lifted her head, and her eyes froze every alien in the room. Her voice, low but sharp, cut through the glass as she promised that no wall could keep her from protecting her child. For a moment, silence gripped the chamber. Several guards felt their hearts beat faster, a strange unease crawling through their chests. One even dropped his weapon, though he quickly picked it back up. None admitted what they felt, but the truth was clear. It was not weakness they had witnessed. It was something darker, something that frightened them without reason. The council leader ordered harsher trials. They forced humans into battle simulations, expecting them to collapse when overwhelmed. Yet every time, the humans stood together. They covered each other, fought side by side, and when one fell, the others fought harder. Alien generals watching from above noted that the humans did not fight like soldiers bound by command. They fought like family, like each loss carved fire into their hearts. That fire burned brighter with every wound. The aliens had never seen anything like it. They whispered to one another, some curious, some afraid, but most still proud. Said humans were stubborn animals, nothing more. But then came the night when a small group of humans, locked in a single cell, began to sing. Their voices were cracked from thirst and hunger, yet the sound filled the corridors like a rising storm. The aliens listening through the walls felt a strange weight pressing down on them. It was not the sound of joy or despair. It was something deeper, a promise that no matter what was done to them, the humans would not break. The guards covered their ears, but the song stayed inside their minds long after it ended. Some could not sleep. Haunted by the echo of human voices in the dark, the council dismissed these feelings, calling them weakness among the guards. They said humans were just trying to manipulate with their emotions. Yet in private, some leaders admitted they had felt something they did not have words for. The word fear had never belonged to them, but now it lingered in their throats. The mocking laughter that once filled the chambers grew less certain. Every new experiment gave results that shook their confidence, instead of proving humans were fragile. The experiments revealed that emotions made them strong in ways logic could not explain. One evening, silver-skinned alien scientist sat before the council and warned them. He said humans carried something dangerous, something more powerful than weapons. He spoke of how sorrow turned into unity, how love created courage, and how even despair did not destroy them, but transformed them into something unshakable. The council laughed at him, calling his fears nonsense. They told him to return to his work and bring them results, not fairy tales. The scientist bowed, but left with a heavy heart. He had looked into the eyes of a human mother, and he knew what he saw was not weakness. It was a fire that, if pushed too far, would consume them all. That night, in the silent cells, the humans whispered to one another. They spoke of survival, of family, of home. They knew the aliens thought them broken toys, but inside, they were preparing. Each experiment only made them stronger, feeding their anger, shaping their resolve. The humans understood something. The aliens never would, that emotions were not chains but weapons. And soon, the galaxy would learn the truth. The Alien Council wanted to push further. Their mockery had not stopped even after the experiments. They believed the humans were only surviving because the tests were controlled and small. To break them fully, the Council ordered something far greater. A fleet of warships was sent to a small human colony on the edge of space. It was a peaceful place, filled with families, farmers, and children, far from the front lines. The aliens wanted to destroy it not because it was a threat, but because they wanted to watch the reaction. They expected humans to collapse, to drown. In grief, and to prove once and for all that emotions were weakness, the fleet descended with fire. They burned homes, shattered defenses, and crushed everything under their weapons. The sky turned red with flames as the colony fell. The aliens watched from orbit, waiting for the humans to beg. But what they saw instead left them unsettled. On the surface, as the fire spread, the survivors gathered together. They stood in the ruins, holding hands, their faces covered in ash and tears. They did not scatter or hide in silence. Instead, they lifted their voices in song. The sound rose through the burning night, carrying strength that even the wind could. Not silence. It was not the sound of surrender. It was the sound of defiance, a promise that even if they were destroyed, their spirit would live on. Alien soldiers who heard it felt a chill crawl along their scales and metal skins. Some dropped their weapons, confused by the shiver inside their hearts. None of them had ever felt such a thing before. Fear was unknown to them, but now, for the first time, they tasted it. Reports of the event reached the council chamber quickly. Some alien leaders laughed, trying to hide their discomfort. They called the singing pathetic, a final cry of broken creatures, but others stayed quiet. One commander who had been there in person stood before the council and spoke with a trembling voice. He said the humans were not like other species, said that their grief turned into strength, their sorrow into a fire that even soldiers could not face. The chamber grew restless. Some called him a coward, but the unease was spreading. For the first time, the mockery was no longer united. A crack had formed in the wall of arrogance. Meanwhile, in the cells where captured humans were kept, word of the destroyed colony spread. The prisoners listened with silent rage. They did not weep loudly, though their eyes burned with tears. They did not cry out for mercy. Instead, they swore to each other in whispers that they would not let the memory of the colony fade. Every child lost, every home burned, every voice silenced would be carried forward. The aliens thought that destruction would break them. Instead, it made them harder, sharper, unshakable. Even the guards who listened to their whispers felt uneasy. One guard, a young alien soldier, went home that night and could not sleep. Kept hearing the words in his head, "We will rise." The council met again to decide what to do next. Their leader demanded stronger action. He said if humans could turn sorrow into unity, then the answer was to crush them faster, to give them no time to recover. But others argued quietly. They had seen the faces of their soldiers after hearing human songs. They had seen hesitation. In the troops who once marched without question, fear was spreading like a shadow, silent but unstoppable. The council ignored these warnings and laughed again, though their laughter sounded thinner than before. They mocked emotions once more, but the cracks in their confidence were clear. Out among the stars, whispers began to spread. Other enslaved. Species who had watched the humans started to talk. They'd seen the colony burn, yet they had also heard the humans sing as the fire consumed them. To these oppressed races, the song was not weakness, it was hope. In hushed voices, not as broken creatures, but as a rising storm, they began to believe that emotions, the very thing the council mocked, might one day break chains stronger than steel. One alien officer who had seen the burning colony resigned from his post. He walked into the council chamber, dropped his weapon, and said he would not fight humans again. The council laughed at him, called him a coward, but he left without looking back. As he walked out, he whispered something that many in the chamber heard but pretended not to. Humans are not prey. They are a warning. His words sank into the silence that followed. That night, as the stars glimmered cold above the ruined colony, the survivors still sang. Their voices were weak, their bodies broken, but the sound carried farther than any fleet could fly. It reached the hearts of both enemies and allies. It planted seeds of doubt in alien minds and seeds of strength in human ones. The aliens thought they had proven humans were fragile. Instead, they had proven something far more dangerous, that humans could take pain and turn it into power. The council would not admit it yet, but regret had already begun. They had laughed at emotions, but now for the first time, they felt the edge of fear. Across the galaxy, the story of the burned human colony spread like smoke carried by the wind. The council tried to silence it, but whispers traveled faster than fleets. Other species in chains repeated the tale of humans who sang under fire. "Hey," said the flames swallowed their homes, but not their spirit. For the first time in many years, enslaved worlds felt a spark of hope. The council laughed in public, pretending the story was nothing, yet even they felt uneasy when the name of humanity was spoken in quiet corners. Something had shifted. The mockery no longer sounded as strong as before, inside the prison cells. The humans listened to the news with silent rage. They knew the council thought them broken, but they were far from it. The memory of the destroyed colony did not crush them. Instead, it pulled them together. Soldiers, farmers, engineers, and even children shared the same fire now. At night, they told stories to one another, not of defeat, but of home, of family, of love. The aliens thought emotions would divide them, yet emotions were the very thing welding them into one unshakable force. Each day, more humans whispered promises of survival. Each day, more humans prepared themselves for the moment they would rise. The turning point came when a human prisoner named Elias was given the chance to speak before the council. They brought him in chains, hoping he would beg for mercy. Instead, he stood tall and looked into the eyes of his captors. His voice was steady, his words simple. He said that humanity was not weak, that every tear they shed turned into strength, and every loss became a flame in their hearts. He told the council that they had misunderstood emotions, that they were not chains but wings. He spoke of love that gave courage, of grief that built unity, and of rage that could not be silenced. His speech was broadcast across alien networks, and though the council tried to cut the signal, millions had already heard it. The effect was immediate. On distant worlds, slaves listened and felt something they had not felt in years. They felt hope. Small sparks of rebellion lit up across colonies where humans and other species worked together under chains. They remembered Elias's words repeated, them like sacred fire, and dared to imagine freedom. Even among alien soldiers, doubt began to spread. Some whispered to each other in the barracks that fighting humans was different, that they carried something that could not be killed by weapons. Fear spread quietly, but it spread far. The council grew furious. They ordered harsher punishments for humans, hoping to scare them back into silence. But the more they pushed, the stronger the humans became. In the cells, humans began to organize. Secretly, they shared messages hidden in songs and carved words into walls. They taught each other strength not of the body alone, but of the spirit. They knew the aliens were watching, but the watchers could not understand the meaning. To them it looked like weakness. In truth, It was the birth of resistance. On one night, when the moons hung low, the humans sang together again. Their voices, carried through the halls of the prison and out into the alien city, citizens of other species stopped to listen. The sound was heavy with sorrow, yet it was not a song of defeat. It was a song of promise. It told every listener that humans would not remain chained. It told them that pain could be endured and turned into fire. The song spread into every corner of the city, leaving even the guards shaken. They stood at their posts but felt their hands tremble. One whispered to another that it sounded like the sky itself was warning them. By now, the council could not ignore the truth. Their mocking words no longer felt strong. Each laugh felt forced, each insult hollow. They had wanted to prove that emotions were weakness, but the galaxy was beginning to believe the opposite. The story of humans was becoming more than a story. It was becoming a warning. The council debated in secret, some demanding the extermination of the humans before their influence spread further, others insisting that fear was clouding judgment. They argued through the night, but none of them admitted what they all knew inside. It awakened something they did not understand. Meanwhile, in the cells, Elias and the others prepared. They spoke of the colony that burned, of the families lost, and of the council's endless mockery. But they did not speak with despair. They spoke with fire. They promised one another that when the time came, they would rise not only for themselves, but for every voice silenced, every song interrupted, every tear mocked. And far away across the stars, other species listened and whispered the same. Promise, the turning point had come. The council believed emotions were a sickness. Now the galaxy was beginning to see them as the cure. Humanity was no longer just a prisoner. Humanity was becoming a spark of rebellion. The council laughed still, but their laughter echoed in empty halls. Fear had entered their empire, and it was growing with every human heartbeat. The galaxy began to change in ways the council had not expected. Where once their fleets traveled unchallenged, now whispers of human defiance followed them. Alien soldiers who had mocked humans started to speak in low voices when they were sure. No one listened. They said humans were strange, that they carried something invisible into battle. At first, these were just rumors, but soon fear became real. Reports came from war fronts where humans resisted against impossible odds. Entire villages, armed with nothing but stones and fire, had delayed armored troops for days. Captains of alien ships sent messages back to the council that humans fought as if they had nothing left to lose, as if death itself could not frighten them. Each report carried the same chilling words. Humans did not surrender. In one system, an alien fleet surrounded a small group of human survivors. The aliens expected them to beg for life, but instead the humans charged with broken weapons and empty hands. They fought with teeth and fists, and when the last of them fell, the aliens were left standing in silence, their victory tasting like ash. Soldiers whispered to their commanders that the humans had fought like shadows, carrying the weight of every loss as fuel. Even hardened veterans admitted they had never seen such madness. But deep inside, they knew it was not madness. It was something far worse. It was courage born from pain. As these stories spread, the council tried to silence them. They declared humans weak, broken, and laughable. Yet the soldiers who had faced them refused to agree. Fear began to creep into the hearts of armies that had once obeyed without question. Some avoided fighting humans directly, choosing instead to attack from orbit. Others deserted entirely, unwilling to face the fire in human eyes. A few even whispered that the humans were cursed, that to fight them was to fight death itself. Inside the prisons, humans could feel the change. Guards no longer mocked them as boldly as before. Some avoided eye contact. Others hurried past as if afraid of staying too long near the cells. The humans knew what was happening. Their songs, their sorrow, their unity, it was working. Fear was spreading, and not only among soldiers. Markets and cities across the empire, citizens of other species whispered about humans. Oh, they said the council had mocked them, but now the council could not silence them. They said humans carried a weapon no machine could match. That weapon was their emotions, and it was turning the galaxy against its masters. On one world, rebellion began with only a handful of human slaves who refused to kneel. Their defiance inspired others aliens who had lived in chains for generations. Together they rose, burning council banners and declaring freedom. The council sent soldiers to crush them, but those soldiers hesitated. They remembered stories of humans who sang as they burned. The hesitation cost them the battle, and the rebellion spread. Soon, whispers of uprisings reached the council chamber every day. The council grew desperate. Their laughter turned into anger, their mockery into threats. They ordered fleets to destroy entire human settlements, but each destruction only added fuel to the fire. For every colony that burned, survivors carried songs to new worlds. For every family lost, the humans fought harder. The aliens began to realize their mistake. They had mocked tears, but tears had become fire. They had mocked love, but love had created courage. They had mocked grief, but grief had built unity so strong that even fear itself bent before it. Alien generals, once proud and arrogant, now feared human battlefields. They changed tactics, avoiding direct contact whenever possible. They launched attacks from a distance, using weapons that kept them far from human eyes. They did not admit it openly, but they knew the truth. If a soldier looked too long into human eyes, he might never raise his weapon again. The council called another great meeting. They shouted at one another, some demanding extermination, others warning that such attempts would only strengthen humanity further. One counselor said that humans were not like other species. He said they were a storm, and storms grew stronger when challenged. His words echoed through the chamber, leaving even the most arrogant leaders in silence for a moment. Meanwhile, far beyond the council's chamber, the humans themselves began to understand their power. They had been mocked, tortured, and broken, in body, but never in spirit. And now, their spirit was turning into something greater than survival. They were no longer fighting only for themselves. They were fighting for every species that had ever been silenced, for every voice that had ever been mocked. They had become a symbol, and symbols cannot be destroyed with fire. The fear spread faster than the council could control. Soldiers whispered it in the barracks, merchants whispered it in markets, and prisoners whispered it in chains. A single sentence traveled through the galaxy like lightning. If you make humans cry, you will see them rise. The council wanted to believe they still held power, but deep down they knew the truth. Their mockery had planted a seed, and that seed had grown into terror. The humans were no longer victims. They were becoming the nightmare of the galaxy. The day of the final battle arrived sooner than the council had expected. Their fleets had gathered in a distant system, massive warships filling the dark sky like a wall of steel and fire. They believed their numbers would be enough to finally crush the humans once and for all. Yet deep in their hearts, many soldiers feared what was coming. They remembered the stories, the songs, the eyes of prisoners who refused to bow. Some whispered to each other that this was not a battle against humans, but against something greater, something that could not be killed. The humans came not with the largest fleet, but with the strongest spirit. Their ships were smaller, their weapons fewer, yet every human on board carried the fire of grief and love. As they moved into position, they did not speak of surrender. They spoke of family, of the lost, of promises made under burning skies. Their voices carried across there. Comes like thunder rolling before a storm. When the battle began, it was not the size of their fleet that shocked the aliens. It was the way the humans fought. Every strike came with the fury of memory. Every maneuver was fueled by determination that no machine could measure. Alien commanders gave orders, their voices sharp and confident, but their soldiers hesitated. Facing human ships was different. They knew that behind every vessel were people who did not fear death. Humans fought like they had already lost everything, and that made them unstoppable. The aliens launched waves of fire, destroying hulls and breaking formations, yet the humans kept coming, even as ships burned. Survivors used escape pods to ram enemy cruisers, sacrificing themselves without hesitation. The council, watching from a distant command station, fell silent. Their proud faces grew pale as they realized their fleet was breaking. On one alien flagship, soldiers refused to fight. They locked their weapons, whispering that they would not face humans again. Their commander roared in anger, but the fear in their eyes was clear. The Council's greatest army was beginning to collapse from within, not because of human firepower, but because of human spirit. Fear spread faster than orders, and soon entire wings of ships began to retreat, ignoring commands. The humans pressed forward, not with victory cries, but with heavy silence. Every strike carried sorrow, every victory carried loss. Yet together it became a storm the aliens could not withstand. In the council chamber, chaos erupted. Leaders shouted, demanding explanations, demanding control, but there was none. They had mocked emotions, laughed at tears, scorned love, and ignored grief. Now those very things had become the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. The humans had turned their sorrow into a blade sharper than steel. They had turned their tears into fire, strong enough to burn empires. The Council could do nothing but watch as their fleets scattered, their pride broken, their laughter silenced. Forever. On the battlefield, a human captain sent a message to the enemy. His voice was calm, almost quiet, yet it carried across channels like a storm wind. He said they had heard the laughter of the Council. They had seen their families mocked, their children killed, their homes burned. He said the Council thought. Emotions were weakness, but today the galaxy had seen the truth. Emotions were not chains, they were weapons. And those who mocked them would live to regret it. His final words were clear, spoken with steady fire. You laughed at our tears. Now you'll remember them. The aliens who heard it could not answer. Some shut down their channels in shame, others trembled in silence. Even those who had once laughed the loudest now felt their hearts twist with regret. They understood, too, late, that they had awakened something far stronger than themselves. Humanity was no longer the prisoner mocked in chains. Humanity was the fire that spread through the dark. When the battle ended, the stars were littered with broken ships. Humans had lost many lives, but their spirit had only grown stronger. The Council begged for peace, their voices hollow and broken. But humanity did not answer with mercy. They answered with silence, a silence that spoke louder than any words. The galaxy would never forget what had happened in the years that followed. Stories spread across every world. Children of alien species grew up hearing the tale of humans who sang in the fire, of mothers who froze soldiers with their eyes, of prisoners who turned sorrow into strength. The Council, once proud and mocking, became a symbol of failure, and the humans became a warning written in the stars. No one laughed at their emotions anymore. No one dared. For the galaxy had learned the truth that to mock human tears was to awaken a storm, and to awaken that storm was to invite fear and regret that would never fade.